Do you like wrestling trivia? Then check out the 5-star match game, the Pro Wrestling Quiz Show. I'm Joe Gagney, and every episode, I grill 3 contestants with 5 rounds of power-packed wrestling trivia. We have over 30 evergreen episodes in the archives covering WWE, AEW, Japan, Mexico, and much, 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 much more. Play along at home and check it out today.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Gotta let it go. Fast to freedom. Stars tonight together. Here everybody's singing. You can't know what your part. Hope you find my what the
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for April 8th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Network podcast feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red boxes to sponsor this podcast, and you set up a one-time or recurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts, it's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside with your other host, Case Lowe. In case, it's Mania week is rapidly approaching us, isn't it?
Boy, is it terrifying. I have a lot of things I need to take care of that I have not done before I leave, but I'm looking forward to it. I am quite excited. I'll be in Vegas Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll come home, and I was telling Mike before we started recording, I have changed my flight schedule on Saturday in an attempt to get home in time to make the Galley Lucha Libre show on Saturday night in Cicero,
Real sick
Illinois.
behavior.
Real sick behavior. But they've booked Hechicero versus Shelwa. And as far as I know, that match is still happening. These Galley shows sometimes are a bit of a gamble. I know the last time they ran a CMLL produced Galley show, they ended up sort of changing the lineup at the last minute, and some of the guys didn't make it over. That was still around the time that CMLL was having some visa issues, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But Vegas, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Mike and I will be there. Obviously, the 2 Dragongate shows, and we were kind of debating on what our schedule is going to be outside of that, and then hopefully some grimy indie lucha on Saturday night in Cicero, Illinois.
I am starting to wrap my head around the, hey, maybe catching that second half of that Martinez show might be the way to end my week.
This is what I'm saying is I know he's washed, and I know it's a better idea in theory than an execution. But if Negro Casas is going to be in town, which he is, I would really like to see Casas work in person. And I'm super bummed, given that the Friday show is not only a Pro Wrestling Revolution show, a promotion that's booked in before, but also Ultimo's on it, and he and Ultimo are boys, that he's not working like the second match on the Dragongate show and then bouncing over to that Martinez show. I know he's on the Defy show. I don't think I'm going to go to that Defy show. So that leaves me with the late night Friday night Martinez Lucha show that I would likely go to and then go straight to the airport because I have a very early flight on Saturday.
Hey, El Mago's there. I mean,
come on now.
I mean, that in of itself might be like, what does the former Drastic Boy have to say here at Wrestlemania Weekend?
I have a lot to say to the former Drastic Boy. That I got to bring a translator with me. I got some questions. Because why would I learn Spanish? It would only be incredibly beneficial for me, and yet I don't speak a word.
Buddy, I've been staring at my Japanese programs, going like, I really need to get connected to this.
Yeah, no, I still think after all these years that one day without putting in any effort, without attempting to learn anything, that one day I'm just going to be watching a match with Japanese commentary and it's all going to make sense suddenly. And I'm going to know exactly what they're saying. And it's obviously that will never happen. And yet I sit there and I go, I bet one day this will click. I bet I'll be able to figure this out. It's like, no, of course not.
I mean, you're able to pick out a lot of the YAMATO promo from yesterday, were you? I mean, he was saying Green Boy a whole lot.
I did catch that. You know, YAMATO, very good at the Japanglish. I'm able to pick up what he's putting down, if anything, just through the tone in which he's speaking more so than the words that he's saying. But
the indignancy coming through,
very much
crossing
so.
cultural barriers.
It's really, it's what is a border when you think about Yamato's promos? It really brings us all together.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But it's going to be great. So, like, getting to Vegas. I mean, I'm going to be out there Tuesday. Like, we decided that we're going to go do, like, Vegas things for a day before.
I was going to ask, because I don't want to blow up your spot. If there's anything you don't want to say, feel free to not be pressured. But, like, are we, and by we, I mean you, your lovely wife, and myself, and possibly Rich Craich, I mean, are we going to make a trip to Gold and Silver Pawn, where the TV show Pawn Stars was filmed?
I mean, that definitely has crossed my mind, as well as the infamous, the infamous construction yard, like, rental place where Jax Taylor tried to get good back with the Toms on Vanderpump Rules. I mean, there's a lot of cultural cachet there. I mean, there's also a bit of me, like, whenever I look at Vegas things, I go, I wonder what I could do to get into and see David Copperfield's, like, magical, like, archive, like a secret archive that's like this crazy magic museum.
I mean, thank God Prestige has booked a good show, because that Thursday night could have very easily ended up with me at Carrot Top instead of wrestling. Big Carrot Top guy. I find him to be absolutely hilarious. Like, I very easily could have ended up there had they not booked a Z-Brats trios match.
Yeah, I mean, are you going to go see the Wagner brothers, or are you going to see? I don't know. I haven't even looked at the stage shows in Vegas at this point.
Yeah, was Chris Angel still there? I enjoyed the
Chris Angel
Freak.
has to be there.
I guess the question would be, if he's not there, what is he doing, and can he get back there?
Oh yeah, Chris Angel definitely still has a stage show in Vegas.
Is 50 Cent still doing a residency there?
I do not know. I mean, like, the natural thing we did was go, like, okay, is there anything at the Sphere? And then it was like, no. And plus, we don't like Grateful Dead. So
God,
why?
The absolute worst. And I think that the Eagles are there starting next week. I think right now the Eagles and the Dead are trading off, and I think the Eagles are back. Yeah, April 4th through the 12th. And then, okay, no, the week where there's back to Dead and Company. Lionel Richie, good God. Ugh.
I mean, if you go to the right, like, clientele, i.e. my parents, Lionel Richie at the Sphere probably is like the concert of their dreams.
I mean, Rich Swann would have a good time, but I would not. It's not something that I want to do.
Okay, so Chris Angel definitely still has Las Vegas residency. He's at the Planet Hollywood.
Hell yeah.
The number one magic show of all time, according to the LV Sun.
I believe that. I don't look. There's a chance I get grumpy with the wrestling and I get mad at the concept of indie wrestling all over again, and there's a chance that I end up doing a little mind freak action.
Okay, so I'm right now looking at tickets for April 10th for you right now.
Let's see. I gotta go to Shop Mind Freak. Hold on. Oh, I don't want a hoodie. I want tickets to the show.
I'll say this, Case. You would be almost paying the same to go to the DDT show.
God, that DDT show is expensive, and that is a bummer, because I want to go to that.
Can we talk Rich and Kings into a me and 3 4-pack offer where it's where I think, oh no, yeah, it's where we can get the tickets for even cheaper. Maybe this is what we do instead, is we go see Mind Freak.
Yeah, Thursday night, 7 p.m. I'm just saying it's not impossible. I have not bought a Prestige ticket yet, and which means that Mind Freak is in play.
I mean, I would argue that the Mind Freak is always in play.
if you think about it, he's always looming.
I mean, Chris Angel is always looming on the cultural consciousness to begin with, man.
Can I tell you, speaking of Vegas, how disappointed I am to see that the Punk Rock Museum, which opened last year, and when I saw that it was going to become a thing, and it's Fat Mike from NoFX, it's sort of his baby, I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck because it's gonna be like photos of the Ramones and photos of Blondie, and then like a photo of Henry Rollins and a photo of the Offspring, and it's gonna be like really corny. But I've been told by multiple people that have been there that it's really cool and it does justice to a wide array of punk bands and punk scenes, and I'm super into it. And then I saw that they're partnering with Circle 6, and that Circle 6 wrestlers are going to be wrestling on the museum grounds. I don't want to be seen there. I don't want people thinking that I like that.
Case, I mean, if you're there at the right time, you'll be able to see Scott Ian from Anthrax be very annoyed by having to put up with these guys.
You know, I've never heard a bad word about Scott Ian. Everybody that I know that knows him is like, yeah, he's as pleasant as he comes across in all those old VH1 Talking Head shows. Like, he's kind of the man.
Yeah. My first encounter with Scott Ian was through those VH1 shows. It took me a long time to realize, no, this is the guy from Anthrax, Mike.
I might have said this on the show before, but it came up in a conversation I was having with somebody yesterday that for a good portion of my life, to be the pinnacle of fame was being on a VH1 Talking Head show. Like
my God, yeah.
The thought of one, just being in a position to be asked to like give my opinion on the 100 most shocking moments in music history, and to possibly have a talking head clip sandwiched in between Chuck Nice and Hal Sparks. To me, I was like, that's what fame and fortune is. That is the life that I'm trying to live.
That is something I would actually put in my high school yearbook. Like, actually, whenever they ask for alumni updates in the newsletter, like, I'm not gonna like put down like, oh, X, Y, and Z launching a critically lauded wrestling history podcast. That'll be returning next week, by the way. But,
yes, a new episode of Those Days coming to you a week from whenever you get this episode.
But absolutely, me being the talking head, talking about Brigitte and Nielsen's love affair with why am I blanking on his name now? Why am I can't believe that I'm blanking on.
I got nothing. I can't tag in here.
Flava Flav. Yeah, Brigitte Nielsen
yes.
and Flava Flav's love affair on VH1. Like, that is the thing I put in my alumni newsletter.
Oh
right?
My God. It's just to have a take on the Rolling Stones at Altamont right before a young John Mulaney gives a nice quip about it. To me it was everything that I ever wanted.
Imagine like I feel like there's an entire YouTube category of people trying to do their own I love the X thing that we are completely unaware of, that probably has like over 6 million subscribers. You know?
I mean,
maybe that's what Hal Sparks is up to now.
I would like to know what Hal Sparks is up to. Speaking of things that we don't understand, maybe you do. Not to go full morning zoo show here, but I'm going to throw a topic at you. Have you seen the clips of these people watching the Minecraft movie?
Other than my first exposure to the Minecraft movie was because of AEW. No, I've not.
Okay.
I'd be awful on a morning zoo unless it's like talking about the complete defenestration of the Moonies in Japan. Believe
it or not, that topic doesn't come up a lot.
I mean, we have to talk about the most successful assassination occasionally, you know.
No,
but no, people watching the Minecraft movie and reacting.
I guess this is maybe something we need to tag Joe Gagney in for, because he has a child of high school age now, which made me feel old when I heard that Joe's kid was now of that age. But people, like, I thought the Minecraft movie was gonna bomb because I thought it was just the next incarnation of the Barbie movie, but who was going to care about it? It's Jack Black, it's Minecraft. Those are things that repulse me outside of High Fidelity, of course. Like, I just thought it was going to be this colossal failure. And it has become this overwhelming success, one of the best opening weekends in history. And people are going to the theater, and when they say the Minecraft catchphrases, which are things that I didn't know existed, I saw a video today of people throwing streamers like they did for BB Hulk 20th anniversary, but it was when Jack Black called somebody a chicken jockey. And I don't know what that means, but I know that people threw streamers in the theater when that happened.
For one, it makes total sense to me that this would be like the incredible like breakout thing, just because it's a game that like even my niece and nephew who are in elementary school still are very like big and aware of. And just because of the power of the kids, it makes sense why this broke out to me. But I do not know what a chicken jockey is. I think that's like something in the game.
I guess. If anybody knows, please let me know, because I'm absolutely baffled by it. So, what we've learned in the first 15 minutes tonight, we are going to see zero wrestling in Vegas. We're only going to go see Carrot Top, Chris Angel, and Lionel Richie. And if anybody could explain the Minecraft movie to me, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, let's talk about the Korakuen from yesterday. It was it ended up becoming a pretty loaded Korakuen show by the time we got out of Kobe Sanbo Hall. We had, of course, kind of the Z-Brats with Dia Inferno versus the D Courage main event, as well as the Open the Brave Gate title, Yamato versus Daigi Yanagiuchi, and BB Hulk's 20th anniversary. Just a lot of kind of things ended up happening in this Korakuen Hall show that I think everyone had an expectation going into this show that this would be the overwhelming. We're on the road to Dead or Alive. We're in front of Tokyo crowd. We're getting the cage match made. And it ended up being basically setting the course that we were expecting.
Yeah, it wasn't a Korakuen show that blew me away by any means. I thought there was one great match and one match that was on its way to being a great match before the finish. But it felt like one of those shows that was necessary, albeit not spectacular. You needed the advancement in the Brave Gate story. You needed the advancement in the Dead or Alive match. And honestly, I mean, that is a star-studded cage match that we're going to get, where it feels like, not to jump too far ahead here, I would say that a lot of people probably feel like the finish of the Dead or Alive cage is pretty obvious at this point. And I'm not saying that it's not, but I do think there's a level of intrigue there that is at least worth exploring. But it is, it's 6 big stars, it's 6 main eventers at this point, and I think that's pretty exciting. So again, it was not the show of anybody's lifetime, but it was all in all a pretty solid effort all the way around.
Yeah, I feel like what we really got on this show was the real kind of tip that we are entering a unit shuffle season, because of not only that no matter what the outcome is in Aichi on May 5th, the composure of the two leading units of the promotion over the last 3 years is going to be completely changed. I mean, we talked all last week about the argument about, oh, it seems like it's time for for a new heel unit, but we're entering a situation that by the time that we get to Korakuen next month, by the end of the show, not only are we going to have a completely different kind of just playing field amongst those 6 wrestlers that are in the cage, but I mean, we also look further down the card. Ultimately, Hyo is going to be ending up in a unit, and he's like at least up until May 5th, he's the biggest free agent on the roster. So it feels like to me that the big takeaway from the show is putting the cards into motion, but also kind of tipping the hand that we're going to see a lot of shakeups coming soon.
I think so. It certainly feels that way. I do feel like the current tone of the promotion is untenable. You have the looming turns of either Kikuta or Yoshioka. You have the looming turn of possibly Shun Skywalker. You have whatever they're going to do with Hyo. You have a constantly evolving Mochizuki Dojo. And you have this Yamato character that feels constantly in flux, sometimes a triumphant hero, sometimes a devastating heel. In Gold Class, they've now existed for over 3 years, and even though the unit feels like it's been forced to restart almost every 6 months, that's a unit that, for as much as you and I love it, and I think their chemistry is great, and I personally would keep them all together until I feel that this unit has run its course, which I currently do not feel that way. Gold Class could change at any moment.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing right now feels definite. I do feel like we could be nearing the end of Vibes, and we could be nearing the end of D-Courage, and technically we could be nearing the end of both Gold Class and Z-Brats. I think Paradox will stick around for a little bit longer, but it is this interesting period in Dragon Gate, and you get this every once in a while where things are just bubbling up, and we all like the explosion, we all like the unit shuffle, we like the big exciting fireworks, but shows like this are necessary to get to that point. And sometimes it's a little painstaking and sometimes a little tedious. I personally don't feel like this show came across that way. And
No, I really enjoyed it.
yeah, and again, I think this Dead or Alive main event, and we can start there. I mean, this is a really loaded match with a few people that I think could lose their hair or mask.
Right. Yeah. No, like, and not to completely side rail us after we had 15 minutes of Chris Angel. It's interesting that we had this show a day after AEW Dynasty, which very much kind of inhabited a similar position, I felt like, on the road to a bigger thing. But you have like the different expectations in that case. Both you and I looked at the show and we had a feeling going into it like, okay, there's not going to be anything definitive, but we are going to be fully on this road here. And like our reaction is like, yeah, no, this is exactly what we wanted with the with this kind of pit stop kind of Korakuen.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
So the cage match came out of the main event of the Gate of Passion 2025 Korakuen Hall show of D Courage, Dragon Dia, Madoka Kakuta, and Ryoya Tanaka versus Shun Skywalker, Kota Minoura, and Dia Inferno. A lot of just a lot of things were happening throughout this match. We'll talk our way through it in a moment, but the big thing afterwards was with the events of the show leading up to Yoshioka coming in to try to make a save for D Courage. He accidentally belts Dia with a cookie sheet to allow Dia Inferno to get the win in the match. Very quickly after Dia Inferno unmasked himself to be Ishin. Who would have ever thought that would have been Ishin if you were watching the 20 minutes before that? And I mean, credit to Jay for at least holding it together for that. But because of all of this turmoil, you had a moment where Tanaka was trying to play peacemaker between Yoshioka and Kakuta, but then both Dia and Kakuta shoved him down. Tanaka just storms off. He leaves the three other members of D Courage in the ring, and then after arguing back and forth, you got Minoura getting involved, being mad about Inferno, and that led into Ryo Saito first announcing that there will be a steel cage match where the loser will either lose their hair or their mask. It originally was going to be between Dragon Dia, Madoka Kakuta, Shun Skywalker, and Kota Minoura, but Yuki Yoshioka interjected and said he should be involved because all of this started to happen when he returned to the ring, so he can't allow those two to be in the match without him being in it as well, which led Ishin saying, hey, that's 3-on-2. D Courage versus Z-Brats. That's not fair. We should have Johnny Valletta in there. That's the person that will even out it. So it'll be 3 Z-Brats versus 3 D Courage. GM Ryo Saito quickly saw through this and said that this is actually going to be Ishin in there because he played Inferno. And guess what? It's Inferno's fault that we've come to this situation. So a lot of moving parts across this Korakuen show. Of course, before the main event, you had a Yuki Yoshioka versus Johnny Valletta, which was exactly what everyone expected. Yoshioka technically got the win because he was choked out by a chain because Johnny Valletta was there to basically abduct Yuki Yoshioka leading into the main event, and then him breaking out into the final moments trying to save D Courage, but actually being the thing that caused D Courage to lose this matchup.
So let's focus on the cage match here for just a second.
Yeah, sure.
And obviously we're still a month away from this show, and we'll have a full Dead or Alive preview closer to it. But I think it's worth noting with the 6 guys in this match, which again, it's Yoshioka, Dia, and Kakuta versus Skywalker, Minoura, and Ishin. After the main event, Yoshioka and Kakuta once again got into a shoving match. This time, it resulted in them bumping into Ryoya Tanaka, who then left the ring and exited. I would imagine this is the last time we see Tanaka, because I don't think we have match lineups for this weekend. This seems like it was the write-off for Tanaka to go to the UK. I could be wrong about that, but yeah. Mike, would you agree this feels like it might be the last time we see Tanaka until the summer?
Yeah, no, I mean, Tanaka has been tweeting about his upcoming matches in the UK. I think he just goes bye-bye for the next few weeks, and the next time anyone really sees him will be in the UK.
Yeah, so it's the remaining members of D Courage, Yoshioka, Dai, and Kakuta, and then Skywalker, Minoura, and Ishin, who are the top 3 guys in Z-Brats. And so this puts you in a position where, again, it's a pretty loaded in terms of star power cage match. Just to go back in history through 2020 through now, the cage matches that have taken place. There was Dangerous Gate 2020. This is during the heart of the pandemic. There was no Dead or Alive 2020, obviously. BB Hulk, Eita, Kai, Masato Yoshino, Yamato, and Big R Shimizu. 2021 was Kai and Yamato teaming against Dragon Kid and SB Kento. That turned into a hair versus mask match between Kento and Dragon Kid. 2022, there was no cage match. 2023, it happened at Kobe World, and it was Dragon Kid, Shun Skywalker, Strong Machine J, Ultimo Dragon, and Diamante. And then last year, we had Kame, Jason Lee, KZ, Shun, and Hyo. To put that in perspective, I think this match blows away, say, 2021, the tag match with Kai and Yamato versus Kid and SB Kento. And I think on paper, I don't know, tell me if you disagree, I think this is as strong as the lineup they had in 2023 at Kobe World, and as strong as the lineup they had last year with Kame, Jason, KZ, Shun, and Hyo.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things that influence like how we look at this. Like, for one, I think it's very like when we look at even going back to 2020, like the last three really 4 cage match losers were all pretty well known, and everyone had a prohibitive favorite very far out, right?
Well, because so I'm trying to think
Monte
about,
was going to lose that mask at sometime. Like that was
Yes.
very clear that they were wanting to do that, and it became a way to do a Kobe World main event without doing the belt, and that wasn't an issue in of itself. But I think unquestionably it was, when that match was made, it was like, I feel like everyone immediately went like, okay, this is Monte losing his mask. Now, how do you get the intrigue leading up to that? And then last year with Hyo, that was in service of that angle. And then you look back to 2021, they couldn't wait to cut off SB Kento's hair because they wanted him to get down the checklist as fast as possible. Then we walk into 2025 case, and I think that there's only really one person or two people that we can immediately just mark out as they're not losing the masks or their hair.
which would you have that as Shun and Daya?
Shun and Daya.
Yep.
I think Shun gets turned, but losing his mask in this fashion seems to be it would be the thing that would force him into that face turn. But I just don't think that that's ever been kind of the plan with him. And then like, who gets the mask in that situation? Who benefits from that in that kind of scenario? I just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And
Daya, just to stay there for 1 second. I mean, that's like asking Mystico to lose his mask. I mean, I know that might sound hyperbolic to some, but in the confines of Dragongate, there's no
other than Ultimo and DK's mask. Those two. Yeah.
And again, like, it's funny because they were in the 2023 match, and in that year, we knew that Shun was safe. We knew that Ultimo was safe. We knew that Dragon Kid was safe. The question was going to be, are they going to pivot on Strong Machine J and take off his mask, or is this the time the Diamante gets unmasked, which ended up being the case there? But there's no heel that would benefit at all from Shun losing his mask. I mean, that would just create more problems than business that it would spark. It would be a disaster.
Yeah, it wouldn't help Minoura to be the person turning on Shun and then taking his mask. Like, it does. That is like the exact thing that there's been too much of with this guy. Not getting the credits, but it's been the execution thereof. So it's like, well, who would you actually look at those other people in the cage? Like, maybe Ishin could get the cred from it, but I would argue that unless Ishin's going to be your new top of the line heel and you're running Ishin versus Shun Skywalker after Kobe World, I don't really see the reasoning of that. Like, so it's just a hard way to see who gets credit in that scenario and who could actually use it and not blow back.
Yeah, Ishin's not there yet. It's not just that. I love the guy to death. I think at some point he could be in a hypothetical scenario in which he would be in the position for that. Now, I'm also in the camp of Shun should never, and I don't think will ever lose his mask, and I just think that's the end of the conversation there. But Ishin's not ready for that. I mean, he's a Cork and Hall Dreamgate challenger. He's not a guy that you could headline Kobe World with, and that's the level that you have to be at if we were going to let this scenario play out.
Right, and then you look across the other person, Daya, just like, unless you're trying to do more Passion of Dragon Daya and it ends up being that Yoshioka intentionally makes him lose his hair, I don't see where that really has a follow-up unless it's a situation where you're trying to really stoke that into an actual blood feud, which, never really happened after the mask loss. Like unless you're going back to that as like a heel face dichotomy, I don't see where the credit there. I mean, like, Ishin gets nothing out of being Daya, and the heels, it's like, okay, so you look at the people that would be turning against them, and it just doesn't line up and make sense for him as well.
Yeah, and also he's got Super Juniors coming up.
Well, but I mean, we're talking about the Kakuta doing this during Champion Carnival.
That's true. I guess I haven't seen the carnival calendar. Is it in the middle of the carnival? Let me try to pull that up real quick. I apologize for not knowing that off the top
I think
of my
there's
head.
a Leisato match after.
Oh boy, I don't want to watch that.
But I mean, like, the thing situationally, if you think about it, though, I look at Kakuta and I don't think that necessarily changes the situation in its weird way. Whereas I don't think Dragon Gate's sending Daya out there randomly with a bald head.
Wow. So All Japan has a Korakuen show on May 6th, and
Right.
that is him versus Saito. And then he's got a Renayabe match that weekend in Hokkaido, and then a Ryuki Honda match that weekend in Hokkaido. Maybe we pull Kakuta from the Champion Carnival. What a bad group of matches that is.
I mean, yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot of things I'd reconsider for Kakuta, including the braids he's doing now too.
Madoka Kakuta got roasted pretty hard for that photo of him in the suit with the hair for the Champion Carnival press conference. And I get it. I'm not going to defend that. I would just like to point out that there is no human on earth that would look good from the angle in which they took that photo. I'm not defending Kakuta's fashion choices nor his follicle choices, but good God, was that a bad angle for any human?
Yeah, he just kind of looked like a big baby.
He did. But I do think, there's a valid conversation to be had with Yoshioka losing his hair, and with Kakuta losing his hair, and with Ishin losing his hair, and maybe bad luck Coach Minoura. Maybe Shun Skywalker's the one that cost him his hair, because he lost his hair to Yamato obviously last year in a hair versus hair match, but Minoura has not lost a cage match, which feels impossible. Doesn't it feel like he's lost about 5 at this point?
I mean, emotionally, it feels like that. Like, has Minoura actually been in a cage match? Because he wouldn't have been in a cage match before 2020. This is his first one.
Yeah. 2020 was the old guard. 2021 was all about Kento. There wasn't one in 22. 23 was the world main event, and last year he was not involved because it was a bunch of wrestlers that I like in that match. So
this is actually a lot of people's first cage match. This show.
Yoshioka, Daya, Kakuta, everybody but Shun.
Yeah, which is, I think, kind of interesting in of itself. And then I like where we're at a month out, where we're able to basically say, you can make arguments for 4 out of the 6 losing.
Yeah, and again, I think that was the case last year, because if you go back and read my preview of Dead or Alive, I predicted that KZ would lose his hair, and I felt like, again, outside of Shun, that match was pretty wide open with Kame, Jason, KZ, and Hyo, that any of those guys could have ended up losing. It obviously ended up being Hyo, but this is as much parity as we've had since maybe the 2020 cage, when that one felt really open, up in the air. There were a ton of weird stipulations for that match. Like, I remember, had BB Hulk lost, and Hulk would have had to go by his shoot name and do the young boy tights and go back to that whole thing. That match felt wide open. 2024 felt pretty open. But this one, while I think the clubhouse favorites would be Ishin and Yoshioka, I would say that there are 4 guys that could end up losing this match.
And it's worth noting that, although it's kind of mentioned on commentary, no one is getting expulsions out of this. Right now, it's just a Mascara contra Caballera at this point.
Yeah, which I know was a point of confusion, because they were talking about unit bonds being broken on commentary. I took that as just, hey, it's a 6-way match and not a trios match in a cage.
Right. Yeah, which I think that for like a second, it felt like it was going to be like that Parejas and Caribe in 2021. But I think that, especially with the stakes of it, it all made a lot of sense. An interesting way to get to that within this match itself. I think that it became more of a traditional kind of Z-Brats match with then Ishin Inferno doing Inferno moves, and you had this very abstract thing that I wonder how much of this match got completely thrown out when Kakuta got busted open real bad, getting his head slammed into one of the ringside signs over on the stairs during the opening walking brawl.
So Kakuta bled in this match as much as anybody that I've ever seen bleed in Dragon Gate.
I mean, it's him or Shingo Takagi in 2011.
Yeah, that's God, what was that match? Was it what's the one that he really got cut on?
That was the one where he got busted open by the bottle before the match.
That's
because
right.
That was
when
the whole
Hulk
turn.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
in 2011.
I knew there was a Shingo thing, but I couldn't think of what specifically it was. I mean, Kakuta was gushing to the point. I was watching this show live, and if you go back and look through the Discord chat, I mean, it was a point of concern, if anything.
Yeah. For a moment, it looked like we were going to have another Dragon Gate physical therapy and ringside standard stock.
Yeah, and it was going to be another issue with Kakuta specifically having this weird freak accident.
Right, yeah. Whereas instead, I mean, you had the great moment, and I love when they are able to pull this off, where Kakuta basically has, and boy, I hope it's healing up okay, a towel tied around his head and a bandage, and trying to go through that for like a hot tag. And it added a certain level to a match where it was very clearly going to be all about like, okay, Ishin is going to be nailing all of Yoshioka's moves. And you had that, but you also had a moment where because of that, you got to have a great Daya beatdown because of obviously killing time for Kakuta and being able to get him back. And you had a solid, I felt like, performance for Kakuta. We're showing a level of pep that we weren't necessarily seeing for him. I felt like up to this point in the storyline, I would say.
Well, I think Kakuta is doing such great work now, and all it really does, I'll hammer this point home one more time, but it highlights how damaging his Dreamgate run was, and specifically the Yoshioka match, where they both just decided to work it like giant boars when they could have done the same exact thing they're doing now. They have a match at Kobe World, they shake hands, everything goes back to normal, and Decourage afterwards. And instead, I don't think Kakuta's public perception has ever recovered from that match. And look, that was a title reign that was more built around the chase than it was the actual reign itself, because you had the great story with him beating Shun at Dead or Alive 2 years after he injured his shoulder in that weird accident. But still, we're now seeing him in real time do this rehab project, where even though he was a great wrestler in 2023 and his output last year was strong for most of the year, it didn't feel like this. And it feels like he has found a new gear, a new persona, a new something. And he is really, to me, I mean, Kakuta's been the shining star in this feud. If you want to factor in the D-Courage guys and the Z-Brats guys and lump all the guys in the cage into one feud right here, I think Kakuta's doing better work than anybody.
Yeah, and I think that you've needed to have him along and show this like level of difference, especially with his interactions with like Yoshioka, whereas we did not see that in his title run in that Kobe World match. It with the kind of character that I feel like Yoshioka kind of plays, it felt like such like a needed like jolt to be like, okay, now Kakuta's having an edge, and maybe part of that is because he's able to come from maybe a position of no, Daya Inferno has been fucking up my matches since you've come back. It's really gotten to me and blowing off, but it's definitely been the connective tissue throughout this entire process. And that also is considering the fact that you have to lump in like the story that they're telling of Johnny Valletta, and how like Johnny Valletta clearly is in the Shun camp within Z-Brats at this point. Like there's a lot of different things that are happening up and down this card that I feel like, at least on the show from yesterday, Case, it all kind of wove into how this main event played out.
I don't know if there was a solution to this problem, because if you talk about the international outreach that Dragon Gate does, there's a few issues that I would rank ahead of this. But this entire feud, I think for people in our bubble that are watching it that maybe aren't super into it. I think they aren't super into it because they're not able to read an iHeart DG recap of all of these promos. And I guess maybe I should let the dream die because that website's been gone for 6 or 7 years now. But I think this has been a great story. I think there's a lot of twists and turns. I don't know where it's going, and it's got some of the biggest stars in the promotion in it, and yet it doesn't feel like it's clicking, at least in our bubble. And I kind of just think that's an issue of it's super detail oriented, and it's a little hard to consume the details when you aren't speaking the language. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Yeah, and I do think that there is the fact that when you look within our bubble, there is a hesitation to do day in, day out. Okay, I'm watching the Dragon Gate shows necessarily, at least from the people that could probably more so than us push I don't want to say narrative, but push like the thing.
People with a wider outreach and more influence than us.
Right. Yeah, because I think if you come into and you just watch like monthly shows basically, or the larger events, you weren't necessarily seeing how much throughout Rey de Parejas that Dia Inferno has been a legitimate issue within this story, other than if you just watched what happened in Osaka's and Tokyo's, you've only really seen like, okay, like Dia Inferno got involved once, but is that really something to completely blow apart this stable
unit.
This unit? And I think that it takes kind of a level of like this, and I would give credit to Jay and Ho because in the downtime, since this is a live show, these Korakuens are live shows that they have that they have like production for it, that is because of the whole Gaora situation that leads to Jay and Ho more often than not having about a 10 to 15 minute block where they're able to catch people up to speed. They did a great job of kind of illustrating this, and there were clips doing that. But I think, though, unless you've been like getting into it and watching Rey de Parejas and seeing that stuff, you might not still get the nuance and the depths that it goes, basically.
I don't remember a time in the last decade in which all of the major promotions, and again, I can't speak to the Joshi promotions, and I apologize for that, but I can't think of a time in which the fan bases of New Japan and Dragon Gate and All Japan and Noah, the day in, day out fans have all had their heels dug in a way that they do that is a disconnect from the parachuters, the people that jump in for the big shows. Like, Chris Sampson made that point in the preview for Sakura Genesis. He was talking about how the Goto versus David Finlay match, the right move in his mind was for David Finlay to win, even though that's going to alienate a portion of our bubble of New Japan fans. And with Noah right now, I am so bored and over and not interested in anything Team 2000X is doing. But one, they are drawing, and two, there's a portion that is defiant that this is the right thing for Noah, and that if you don't get it, you're the problem. And All Japan, I just have such a tremendous disconnect with that roster, even though I appreciate what they're doing. But the All Japan people are super into the Saitos and pushing them to the moon, and they want this and that for the Saitos. And then we're over here in our camp, and it's like, I don't know, this Dead or Alive cage match feels like a massive deal to me. But if you were going to show this to, even just the other hosts, let's say we're just polling the hosts on the Voice of Wrestling Podcast Network, they're going to go, well, where's Yamato, and do I even care about Madoka Kakuta? I don't care about Yuki Yoshioka. Like,
wait, Kota Minoru's in another main event.
Yeah,
I'm not even bothering.
Such a great point. There's absolutely a Minoru detraction there, just because of the fact that he was the main character in the summer of 2022, when for a variety of reasons people were paying more attention to Dragon Gate than maybe they are right now, even though the promotion's better. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you feel that way, where it's like, man, there's very few fan bases right now that just feel like they're in total unity, both the day in, day out people and the people that parachute in?
I think that with that, and at least as it pertains to Dragon Gate, I think that there is a larger kind of overall thing where I think critically everything has been, at least if I was going to like basically do good or bad, just tally marks throughout the last, to be fair, since last July, it would be probably like a running total, one of the best like ratios of good to bad. But I think we also have like an issue of not only just like the international fans and just like the way that people get into their camps. There's also a larger discussion of not necessarily this critical kind of thing paying off the box office too. Like there is a level of that as well. But as like it relates like the camps and such, at least I feel like, and I can only really speak for myself and like how my habits are case, it feels like that 2025, although there is the critically good stuff, they're just throughout the world of wrestling, and I think it does apply to the various the various promotional fan bases, that everything is resonating so much more, and there's just not a within the fan base that, and there's nothing that's like the big, oh, you've got to see this, and everyone banding behind it as like, oh, this is the thing. There's just seems not to be that higher level thing going on right now. I mean, it is something where like I go through and I watch like Sakura Genesis, and I'm like, do I really want to record my thoughts about Sakura Genesis when I feel like it was just overall like fine, you know? Like without like forcing any sort of like high level opinion. I feel like what we in 2025 are we seeing a lot of stuff that is not necessarily connecting in a way where it would connect that way in years previous, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think the only thing that's really hit on that level this year was the Goto title win.
Title win and Kenny versus Gabe.
And you're right, Kenny versus Gabe. Those were the two things that felt, I guess, what we now have to deem as a little bit old school, where it felt like there was this effort of taking people by the hand and going, no, you don't understand. You have to watch this. And I guess it's a quality issue. I mean, you know, I certainly send out my little emails.
I felt that way about Yamato versus KZ, but that didn't necessarily translate to other people necessarily going out and tracking down Yamato versus KZ.
No, I send my emails, I send my DMs when I for the Rey de Parejas finals, I told a lot of people they should watch it, and I always get the thank you, the thumbs up, you know, whatever. I my opinion is not worth more than anybody else's, but there's certain tastemakers out there that I'm like, hey, you know, you're saying a lot of things about how poor Japanese wrestling is right now, and I'm not even saying you're wrong, but you probably should give this a look. And then it just the second half of that doesn't necessarily see the follow through all the time. So I don't know what it is, but I am curious by that right now. It does feel like the four major men's promotions just have this widespread disconnect that I'm really intrigued by, because I don't remember all of these promotions having this at the same time like they do right now.
Yeah, and I feel like similarly, while you have like this disconnect, it's happening at a time where there's like so many different variables that I can almost say like what goes on in like those people's minds when it's like, oh, that sounds great, but I need to get through all these hours of AEW TV, WWE on top of whatever international stuff I'm watching in it. And I wonder at a certain thing, is it the content funnel has now become so overwhelming case that people aren't able to kind of go like, well, you know, I want to like check that out now. Like, thanks for doing this. I really need to see this now. I just think that everyone is either satiated by the wrestling, the wide breadth of wrestling that people can choose to consume, or they're overwhelmed by it. And that kind of leads to the same decision where people aren't necessarily being led to the hand, being led to the trough and say, no, but really it's Yamato versus KZ, and they have one of those matches. Come on, guys, you need to watch this. Like, I wonder if the amount of content is a variable influencing things as well.
Look, that is a real thing, and that's not a wrestling thing. That is a life thing. I deal with that every day at my job. Finding out what cuts through and what people are actually paying attention to is it's a process that is harder and harder every single day.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, the one quantity and the one commodity that everyone has that becomes less and less over time, and the more important on the amount you have is your time. So it just feels like now we have reached a point where it's just like the funnels are so overwhelming that you're not necessarily able to always lead people by the hand through things, or people aren't as respected.
Look, I think in my life, there's 3 guarantees of things that cut through, and that is football, that is Taylor Swift, and that is weekly prestige HBO content. Which White Lotus being the most recent example of that. Not these shows that drop all their episodes at once, because then the problem is when these new shows drop all their episodes at once, everybody's in a different place. They're not all on the same page, and then nobody can talk about it because nobody wants to spoil anything. But it does still seem like
the concept of event television still exists with the prestige show. Yeah,
you know what a fucking novel concept that is. I can't. I was so disappointed in The Bear for season 3 that they dropped all those episodes at once. Because again, here it's The Bear everywhere is a big deal, but here it's it really. It felt like it was on its way to becoming this institutional thing in Chicago.
And then you would get 2.5 months of celebrating that versus, oh, it's right here right now.
Exactly. And then it's just like, oh my God, this sucks. Because again, nobody could talk about The Bear because I was on episode 1. They were on episode 4. Somebody was on episode 7. Somebody watched it all in one night. Okay, well, now we can't talk about it. But yeah, it does still seem like those 3 things on a cultural level, everybody or most people at the very least can keep up with. But in wrestling, I mean, again, why do people talk about Dynamite and Raw? Because it's weekly appointment viewing and everybody's watching it at the same time. Anything else these days is a total crapshoot.
Yeah, I mean, like in White Lotus is like kind of the perfect example, like permeates in my life where me and my wife had the discussion that that's a show we watch every Sunday together, and going like, no, babe, please go ahead, watch the finale. And then like the actual act then of like, oh no, we're going to then again, like, because it's appointment thing to be in the culture. It can be easier to like avoid spoilers with like wrestling, but things like White Lotus still have like that cachet that at least for a little bit crossover. I don't know if season 4, after how season 3 ended, is necessarily going to be that appointment anymore though.
You want to do 30 minutes on Parker Posey and her otherworldly talent, or do we just want to move on to to what else is on the Dragongate Korakuen?
I mean, if folks next week want to talk about Parker Posey, come find Case
I'm available.
Case and
that is a conversation I will have.
Yeah, let's talk about this Bravegate match. Yamato versus Daiki Yanagiuchi, of course, set up. Daiki deciding to be brave and ask, please, Yamato, please start defending the Bravegate again. And that ended up like tripping him into a title shot here. Yamato versus Daiki Yanagiuchi. Mochizuki throws in the towel for young Daiki as Yamato has him in the middle of the ring with a lion tamer. And after a well-fought match from Daiki. And let's talk about the match itself before we get into the giant kind of post-match thing.
Well, I got to talk about the entrances, the pre-match, before I talk about the match. Daiki Yanagiuchi comes out in a row of Korakuen Hall employees, all in the same shirt that he wears when he walks to the ring. They all line the entryway and high-five Daiki on the way to the ring. And Mike, that is... For some reason, they don't play the anthem before Dreamgate matches anymore, but stuff like that to me is still, in all capital letters, the Dragongate difference. That is the thing that sets this promotion apart from anybody else.
You know, we talked last week about those old fan banners being lost and the ones that would hang over the entrances. And, you know, it works just as well before a big Daiki Yanagiuchi Korakuen Hall match that his coworkers come out and celebrate. It really added to a tenor of a special kind of a real like kind of career redefining kind of match for Daiki, having that trapping of just surrounding him as well.
Well, the funny thing is, like in the Voices of Wrestling Discord this past week, there was a long conversation about Daiki and what his ceiling is and what he is and all these other things. And it was, it's this match. This is what he's there to do, and he's there to do this in a Bravegate setting and eventually a Twin Gate setting and eventually a Triangle Gate setting. But this is it. This is the peak performance that we're going to get out of him. Not that I don't think at some point that he might become a better wrestler. I think he's very good now, but this is what his whole career should be defined by until he has a Kotoka-like heel turn, which I do think will happen at some point. This was the perfect use of him and the perfect use of Yamato.
Yeah, and you have this match where scored on, if we were going to do scorecards here, it was Yamato 10-7 on this match. It was fully for him throughout it and treated it very much like I am so much on a completely different plane than the scrub here. but you had just the right moments for the Daiki fire-ups, the two Gucci rockets leading to the third one where Yamato just kicks out his legs. And it just was such a fun situation where you got to see Yamato do his take on a championship rookie versus vets match, and Daiki kind of redefining himself, where now the tequila shot, we have his finish. Like, it really felt like, oh, he's coming out of this match. He got that big rebound Galleria kick out, and he doesn't submit. He comes out of this, and you look ahead to what will happen with the Bravegate, and now he's instantly in that picture for as long as he wants to be, and as long as the company wants to be. Like, for what this is, and for this particular position, Daiki Yanagiuchi is now a made man in that role.
And I don't feel like this is an insult, but
no, this is a high compliment, that like being so good at your job and being so good at this one aspect of pro wrestling is so important for a promotion like Dragongate, that like if this promotion had 4 Daiki Yanagiuchis being able to inhabit those roles within the units, you wouldn't have to worry about the lower card whatsoever. But like, it's so important for him to be able to do this. Like, I think it's a great compliment that he knocked it out of the park here and now has his future set up by this match.
It does feel like he could end up filling the shoes in Tokyo that UT does in Aichi. Whereas, I will push my chips in and say that Mochizuki Jr. at some point will be the Tokyo edition of what Dragon Kid is to Aichi. I think throughout Daiki's career, he's going to get beat like a drum in Korakuen. At some point, we're gonna probably look back on this Yamato match and go, oh, what a tame beatdown that was compared to what Kato did to him, or Ishin did to him, or somebody that hasn't debuted yet. Who knows? But this is it. I mean, I was blown away. He's now somebody that I at least have to have in my rough draft on 30 under 30. And he's a weird one where he obviously doesn't have the potential of an Ishin or a Kato, and he doesn't have the ceiling of a Shun Skywalker or a Dragon Dia. But there is just raw talent there with Yanagiuchi that at this point I do think is somewhat undeniable.
Yeah, so where you get to have him play off with Yamato, who knew, I mean, he is at a point in his career and in this stretch with him that there was no doubt that Yamato was going to come in here exactly as mean Yamato and absolutely try to humiliate Daiki throughout this match, but it came off like through a certain kind of way where he loses his cool and just decides, well, this rookie is just frustrating me so much, I'm going to treat him like a rookie. And instead of really looking for like the right moments for Galleria and doing it definitively, he wanted to torture Daiki, and it felt like such a strong performance from him as well, holding up his end of that bargain.
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have asked for more from this guy where, Yamato beats him down and bloodies his chest with a series of chops, and you get everything you want out of that there. The Boston Crab spots, the multiple Boston Crab spots I thought were all outstanding. But when Daiki was on offense, it wasn't compromising to Yamato. It didn't feel like Yamato had to lower himself to be in a position in which he had to sell for Daiki. This felt like a guy that was on the cusp of stealing what would have been not only the biggest win of his career up to that point, but it would have been the biggest win of his career, for if he wrestled for another 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
It felt like it, in the moment. I think you nailed it with the 7-10 scorecard, where you're right. Yamato was mostly in control for this entire match, but there was always a looming threat that a roll-up could have happened or one great forearm could have happened, and it could have turned the tide immediately. And so I thought they played this perfectly. It's a fascinating sort of tip in the cap of Yamato, where to talk about the same thing that I've mentioned since September. Now we've seen Ishin have the best match of his life against Yamato, and we saw a great Kano match against Yamato, and then at Final Gate we saw the best Dia match, and then at Gate of Bayside we saw the best Strong Machine J match. KZ might have had the best Dreamgate challenge of his career against Yamato in March, and now we have this one offshoot Bravegate match. And far and away, it's the best singles match that Daiki Yanagiuchi's ever had.
Yeah, I just love the fact that Daiki's offense, the most he was really able to do was get completely fired up, get a 1 count from Yamato, and then he gets a 2.5 for the tequila shot. And you notice a tenor in Yamato change where after the first 2, so Daiki does get 2 flash pin attempts, but after that moment, he just completely goes like, oh, I see what this kid is trying to do here, and just shut it down. And it just is a real fascinating way to kind of work a match like this. I ended up being 4 stars on it flat. It just really felt like a special kind of match, especially for Daiki. And for Yamato, it kind of adds to his great resume that he's had since this title win here. And he goes down in the books now as a successful Bravegate defending champion.
So 1,300 plus was the announced Cork in attendance.
That felt a little charitable to me.
See, it's funny. I was, for whatever reason, I was kind of hyper fixated on the attendance for this Cork, because I kept on looking at the ticket page, and it wasn't looking great. And then I turned the show on, and I went, "Oh, they filled this building pretty nicely." But let's put it in the ballpark of 1,100 to 1,300. If anybody wants to count chairs, feel free. Don't tag me. I don't care. But we're in that ballpark, and this is becoming the tough thing as we progress throughout this year now. And some guys have resumes where, again, unless we see AEW really pivot with the way they're handling Will Ospreay, and maybe that will happen at All in Texas, I don't know, but there's nobody in AEW that I would feel comfortable putting in the Flair Thez conversation yet, not after the disastrous main events that Moxley's had in back-to-back months. I would not vote for anybody in WWE, period, but I don't even think they've had that special of a year. And so you're kind of looking at a Flair Thez right now, and Mystico's hurt, so you can't even take the obvious candidate from CMLL there. You're looking at a conversation that is Hiroki Goto in 2025, and then you go,
Well, he's going to win the Tokyo Sports MVP award this year. And just like right that
and that's fine, because the moment at New Beginning, I mean, he deserves it. I'm thrilled that Goto's having the year that he's having, but we're now into April, and you go Goto, and then I guess Cody, if you were going to go in that realm, and we'll see how long Mystico's out. I mean, every update about Mystico is getting worse and worse. It doesn't seem like it's going to be an injury that he's going to come back from here in the near future. Yamato can't be a candidate because we haven't seen business turn around in a definitive way. But Yamato's also doing everything else that you would want out of maybe not a first place vote, but definitely a third place vote. And it's early. We don't have to make this decision now. We don't even have to get into a super deep conversation about this, but I just don't know what to do with that, because he's doing everything except for the part that people factor in the most.
No, I completely co-sign and agree with you on that. It's just a real interesting conundrum, to be honest.
And I can't believe it. I said this coming out of Champion Gate, but I can't believe it's not working better. I can't believe they aren't doing 1,500 for every Korakuen show right now, because this Yamato, I mean, this is the best work of Yamato's career, and he's the biggest star, and your second biggest star is Shun Skywalker, and I think he's in a super compelling feud. And that's where, as an analyst, I'm a little baffled, because it's not like the absence of Big Boss Shimizu, as I tug my collar and notice that he's not in the all-out war match next month with Natural Vibes. It's not like Shimizu was this giant star that has caused this loss in business, and it's not like Flamita being away has drastically changed anything.
And it's not like, I would say that if you're going as like a head-to-head war thing, it's not like I could say definitively, oh, Glate's winning this thing.
No. I mean, they're more relevant than ever.
I don't even know if you could argue at this point, maybe, except for like the true diehards that stick with them. I don't know necessarily you put that entire roster back into Dragon Gate that it really affects things in this situation.
Well, that's an interesting conversation, because
I mean that might be a deeper Voice Gate Unleashed, I guess, but I just like it's like such a interesting and unique kind of situation that you kind of like look around and you go like, okay, at least box office wise, Ozawa turned out to be the right move for the short term.
Objectively working.
Objectively working.
And I think that it's gonna die a death here pretty quickly, but objectively working.
I mean, it's pro wrestling, Noah. The closer that we get to the summer, the more likely that things are going to face plant. Like that's just the way of life with them.
Noah was a promotion last year I actively enjoyed Noah last year until the day of the N1 finals, and then I hated the promotion for the next 5 months. And then
the moment's always coming, Case.
And people will try to act like it's not, which is the funny thing. It's like, hey, no hate. If you like Noah, you like Noah. Like I don't care. It doesn't affect my life in any way. But we have 25 years as of this year of going, don't get too excited, don't get too excited, don't get too excited.
Well, eventually, if you see an equine animal with stripes, you're going to call it a zebra. Like that's the thing. But yeah, it's such a interesting, unique situation with Yamato this year, as it kind of relates to the promotion. In the post match, Yamato called Yanagiuchi a green boy at least 4 times throughout his promo. But the main thing was that he made a successful defense. But Yamato, as he stated when he won the belt, he's not intending on really being a Brave Gate champion. But now he knows that people want to fight for it. And he felt that, say what you will about Yamato and say what you will about Daiki Yanagiuchi in the lead up to this match, he showed a level of bravery. And that brought out UT, Hyo, Kamei, Rita, and Fuda to make an appeal. Yamato's officially vacated the Brave Gate title after his first successful defense, and a new champion will be crowned soon, with those 5s along with Daiki as the major players. And maybe we need to see if Hamare qualifies, because I feel like our predicted tournament is going to be kicking off in Kobe soon.
Yeah, how do you feel about the timeline of this? Because I know some people
don't like it.
Okay, go ahead. You have the floor. Talk to me about your beef with it.
So I think that this Brave Gate freezing of the Brave Gate situation did a couple really important things. For one, everyone knew that, with the exception of one person, Yamato was the man of the promotion, because he had both the singles belts, and this is a promotion that is so conservative with the amount of titles that they have around. Going from 4 to 3 is a big deal. And it felt like that was a real era shift. It's like, okay, we've had, in case we talked about the last few runs, we've had a lot of the same people around the Brave Gate for better parts of 4 years now. At least the people that are around, but you see a lot of Hyo, a lot of Ishin, and you'll see a lot of Dragon Daya there. I don't like the fact that Hyo coming out and entering his throwing his name in the hat. I feel like completely ruins the second good thing that shelving the Brave Gate did, which was delineate eras and the people who are really fighting for this belt. Because UT, absolutely, that's his big life goal, is to have the Brave Gate title. That's what brought him into pro wrestling. He definitely feels like someone that is still at the Brave Gate level. Does Hyo right now feel like at the Brave Gate level? Or at least if you're doing like a big pause and restart, ending up with the belt back on Hyo completely defeats the purpose of the belt going away in the first place.
Do you think, if let's say they do a tournament, and I know we talked about the tournament being in Kobe, but Hyo is going to be involved, so they're gonna figure something out there. If the first round match of the tournament is Hyo versus Hamare, and Hamare beats Hyo, do you think that negates all the points you made, or do you still think that just Hyo being around is the issue?
I don't think he's in the Brave Gate picture anymore.
The problem with him is I don't know what to do with him, because
I don't know if the company knows what to do with him as well.
And we can get into that in just a second, but I'm kind of just convinced that Hyo and Monte should just be a tag team and kind of exist in their own universe for a minute. I don't know what else to do, because you could make the argument with Kame that it's like, oh well, there's a ceiling on him with his size, and he's older
and he's never held it.
And but the thing with Kame is, at the very least, you can put him in the ring with Rita, and he has the best matches in the promotion. He's got the best chemistry with Shun out of anybody, and Shun's their best wrestler. So you at least have this valve you can hitch Kame, that's like, oh, he's a great wrestler. And with Rita, oh, he's a great wrestler. And with Homare, oh, he is becoming a great wrestler. With Hyo, you're just stuck in this position where he's objectively over, but he's not as good of a wrestler as these other guys. And so I just don't know. I don't know what you do with him.
No. I think that's entirely fair. And yeah, I feel like, at least as how it relates to Hyo and like the Bravegate situation and kind of the overall belt thing, like it's never been a situation where like for that the Bravegate is a middle title. Like it's always just been seen as, okay, this is the Bravegate division. You have to be at this weight division to be at it. Like that's always kind of been a thing with it. But the great conservatism of Dragon Gate that I just talked about like 4 minutes ago, about being willing to say, hey, we only have this many titles and we're taking one away. There is a scenario where, like, a situation where if there is a Dragon Gate Network TV title belt, Hyo is just like, okay, that's what Hyo does. And that this is just a promotion that just doesn't have that avenue for him, right?
Yeah, and it would be counterproductive, if not downright catastrophic, to turn him heel. But, well, I guess we can talk about it now. So next month, they're going to do Gold Class versus Vibes, 4-on-4 with Flamita returning. Again, no mention of Shimizu. I tug my collar.
Keep your eye around that date, because that would be, at least for me, that's when I'm paying attention, because it would be, in theory, around 6 months.
Okay, yeah, that's true. So you're in this position where it's a 4-on-4 match with the winning team getting the rights to Hyo. I personally feel like they're going to blow up one of those two units there, and that Hyo's not going to join Vibes or Gold Class, but Hyo's going to start his own unit with guys from either one or both of those units.
Yeah, I feel like that there's a certain thing where you look at both of the units, and I mean, if you were to tell me point blank which one would I'd rather have Hyo in, I'd rather have Hyo in a Gold Class. I think that he provides like a number 2 in a way that is just not there with Kame, Rita, and Junior right now. Like there is like the issue of Hyo, but there's also the reality that him and Ben could actually like really hold up that side of the ledger for that unit, though.
Do you feel like there's a possibility in which they're working their way into a class of 2016 unit with Ben, Yoshioka, Shun, and Hyo all teaming together?
That would be interesting. I would like that. It feels like it's been a long time since we've had like a true class-based unit.
Because let me think out loud here. So
it matters if you would count like the idea around Dragon Gate generation, but people like Yamato teaming with Kota Minoru.
Yeah, no, that doesn't. That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So
it's millennials, basically.
Yoshioka, Shun, and Hyo would have been in Mochizuki Dojo together, and
right, yeah.
Ben and Shun teamed together in 2019 when Ben was Dreamgate champion, but never an official unit. Ben and Hyo didn't overlap in RED, and there's been no overlap between those four. I guess it's 2019, so it's fresh, it's exciting. It would be one hell of a super babyface unit. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but it is something that I think we have to consider at this point, that maybe Hyo poaches Yoshioka and then Ben and then Shun, and we have a unit.
And you'd have the natural class of 2016 versus Paradox kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. You get that. So I don't know. The Hyo thing is very weird. The Monte thing is very weird.
Yeah, Monte is completely excised himself from the scenario here. Like, so Gold Class extended invites to both of them. Monte said I had something else on my mind. Hyo seemed to entertain it. Natural Vibes comes out and was like, hey, we went in on this too. They start basically doing tug of war with Hyo over him.
Man,
but
maybe
Monte's just kind of doing his own thing.
I know,
which makes me wonder if that's it for Monte.
Oh, I don't. Well, I mean, it's weird, right? You know, he came in, he worked with Ultimo, he lost his mask, turned face, won the Dreamgate Championship. There hasn't been a natural step for him since he won the Dreamgate belt, and I still think they screwed that up. You know, I really hate that 3-way. I really hate how he won the belt. I think they could have very easily just waited until Bayside to do it and had Shun versus Monte in a singles match. I think that would have been much better than the 3-way they did. So I guess that's a possibility. You're right. This could be the end of Monte, and I wouldn't like that. Or maybe he gets put on the Flamita schedule. I think that'd be a crushing blow for match quality on the roster, but it does seem like something that might just be an unfortunate reality right now.
Yeah, no, and that's just pure speculation and just looking at kind of what's going on. Is going like, what is his new thing that he has planned is the question with that. And it's a real situation where we are, again, we kind of let off the Dragon Gate portion talking about this. The reality is everyone but Paradox is on unshaky ground right now. And I think that whenever in Dragon System history you have these sorts of matches, it's not always a one-to-one, okay, you get custody of Hyo. It can portend a whole lot more. And with that happening at the same time of all the other unit kind of battlefield intrigue, it just really puts you in a situation where it's like, well, what could happen if Hyo? Well, really, you could make an argument for me for everything but a heel turn for him right now, and I would buy it at this point. I mean, Hyo's teaming with Benkei and KZ in Vegas. Like, it's a completely open playing field, I feel like.
Yeah, the more I'm looking at the roster page right now and just kind of going, okay, if I could take everybody out of every unit and build something around Hyo, I would keep him and Monte together. But I mean, look at the roster. Oh, I don't know who else to put with him right now. And that's if everybody's on the table.
Yeah, it's a time where like, and maybe this is just like the 1% chance that everything gets blown up and we're going to a completely like fresh unit landscape. But it's one of those situations where like I like look at this case and I go like, there's a part of me that's wondering if we're going to get in a scenario where if it is a generational war, that could play out, but it's just there's a lot of uncertainty as it kind of plays out right now.
As I sit here and complicate things,
that's what we've been doing this entire episode.
But you know what? I'm looking at the roster and it's like, fucking put him in Vibes, have him team with KZ, and we're done. We'll just move on. Put him in a tag team with KZ. Put him in a twin gate match at Kobe World. They lose the twin gate match. Everyone, and we just move on with our lives. Maybe that's just the solution to all of this.
I mean, he might have a dance. I mean, but I'll tell you the person whose dance I want to see in Natural Vibes more is Ho-Ho.
Well, yes. Look, if I had my way, Ho-Ho would be a permanent member of Natural Vibes. Yeah, and Natural Vibes would go on forever.
Yeah. And if it ends up just being Strong Machine Jake, KZ, UT, Flamita when he's around, and Ho-Ho.
That sounds awesome. You know, the bummer, though, it's going to be a real bummer if Flamita comes back and Shimizu never comes back, because I enjoyed Shimizu monkey flipping Flamita in their entrance so much, and I'm going to be really sad if I never see that again.
Yeah, I know. Like that for a moment, we had everything.
We had everything, and the Shimizu thing. I mean, I don't know anything. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, go back to when we talked about it in December. Nothing has really changed.
I heard one story that was,
what we said in December,
far from double sourced. I heard one story about what might have happened, and I went, oh, okay, that would be befitting of a suspension. I would have assumed it would have been over by this point.
Yeah, but that story was predicated on the idea that, that kind of scenario doesn't seem like the thing that would lead to someone being suspended for over 5 months.
No, yeah, for this length of time. But it was, again, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'd be pissed too. But yeah,
it's just nothing that we could ever get more than that.
No, I would need that specific story to be triple sourced.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Elsewhere on this cork, and we don't have to talk a whole lot about it because it was just kind of a nice time. BB Hulk had his 20th anniversary match, teaming with Jinsei Shinzaki and Shimo Hagashi, who is a bar owner. I'm going to try to pronounce his full name correctly. Yoshitomo Shimogashi against Susumu Akosa, KZ, and returning from Hakadate, Katsuo. It was Hulk getting the win over Katsuo with a first flash that hit him flush on in a match that kind of was just a good time.
I was telling Mike before we started recording that I'm just having a hard time for whatever reason sitting down and putting my thoughts on paper for this show review. But I am hoping that I find the time and I find the right mindset to write a little bit about BB Hulk's career, because I really do think he's an interesting guy. I feel like he has lived more lives and had more personas in his 20-year career than most wrestlers could ever dream of. And I find Hulk's career to be really interesting. I find his place in the Dragongate Pantheon to be incredibly interesting. And he's somebody that, at one point was one of my favorite wrestlers on the roster. And at this point, I'm kind of amazed at how good Hulk is at certain points now. He can go in a big match when he needs to. So seeing him get the celebration, seeing him get the streamers, seeing Kota Ibushi come out and give him a hug at the end of this match, it was all very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment of oh god I had when I saw him. But
look, if we're having conduct issues with Big Boss Shimizu, I'm not worried about Kota Ibushi joining the fold anytime soon.
Yeah, no, but it just Hulk is such an interesting figure because you mentioned the other lives and just like the eras of which he was like the major player and really like influence things like in different ways throughout the promotion. I feel like is so interesting. Like even after, I mean, his real career defining match against Shingo Takagi at Final Gate 2014, you still have like such a wild breadth of things to talk about with him for like what he had as like a match that uniquely was at like his 10-year or just about his 10-year anniversary, and how it kind of completely changed everything after. My big takeaway from Hulk in this match, and especially like with Katsuo, really, I come up with this a lot, Case. So this idea that throughout, I mean, really, COVID, we've seen a real interesting thing happen within this promotion where the realities of time, the greatest bastard of all, catching up to the promotion in a lot of ways and seeing that first generation of stars that were there for the first 20 years kind of curtail and start fading away, and what is this promotion in a lot of ways. And you kind of like look at Hulk and you go like, man, he is someone very much who embodied a lot of what Dragon Gate has been for the last 20 years. And like hearing that 20-year thing felt like a level of maybe it's not just that first generation, but you have figures like Hulk that are now there's a lot less in front of them than behind them at this point.
Well, I mean, we were talking about the match earlier. Go back and look at the Dangerous Gate 2020 cage match. And it's BB Hulk, Eita, Kai, who was at a completely different point in his Dragon Gate career than he is now.
Well, it was a heel turn match.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and which led to a year later him winning the Dream Gate belt. So BB Hulk, Eita, Kai, Masato Yoshino, Yamato, and Big R Shimizu. Most of those guys are, Eita's gone, Yoshino's gone, Shimizu half gone, asterisk there. Kai had his peak and is on the way down. Hulk, I think, is actually largely stayed in that same place. And then you have Yamato, who, is luckily having a resurgence in the past, year and has done such great work. But that was 5 years ago. And it just kind of
really feels like a lifetime.
And this kind of goes back to the bubble thing that I was talking about earlier, and the discontent and the difference in thought with our major promotions right now in Japan. It is this odd thing, and I think this is not a thing that is unique to wrestling. I think this is a thing unique to life, where people are claiming they want new, they want fresh, they want to evolve, and then they're faced with new, fresh evolution, and they go, well, I don't know what this is. I don't like this. And I really do feel like there is some level of Dragon Gate that I don't know if penalized is the right word, because again, that puts me on the attack, on the offensive, and I don't want to make it come across that way, but the fact that the promotion, let's just say, is maintaining some level of relevance, and have maintained the relevance that they have with the amount of turnover that they've had. And yes, you've had, your Kento and Fujiwara's flame out and Ishida jump ship and all those things like that, but they're shedding weight of Kness and a broken down Yoshino and Eita with a bad neck, and they're just restocking the pond time and time again. And sometimes I scratch my head when it's like, all right, look, maybe this new generation doesn't connect with you. And I'd call a little bit of bullshit on that, but whatever. But it's like, they should be applauded for the fact that the toughest thing they've gone through was in 2018 with the split, and ever since then, really since the beginning of 2020, which was obviously drastically altered by the pandemic, but they've had their bearings straight since 2020. And most promotions, if they had what happened to them happen in 2018, they would just fold, or they would become a micro indie, and we would never see them again. And Dragon hasn't had that. They just continue to restock the pond in this way that I think is so interesting. And so now, we're not relying on a BB Hulk Dream Game match. And I know we had one in 2021, and even then that felt like a farce. It felt like Hulk was far beyond that point when he challenged Yamato for the belt, even only 3.5 years ago now. It ties into the fact that BB Hulk has now been around for a very long time, and I mean this is no insult to BB Hulk, but he's a guy who feels like he's been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
Multiple generations have passed him by, and in some promotions that they can't say that.
Yeah, and I think like that's a unique thing about Hulk, like portraying, I mean, the absolute like the paragon of the idol male star from like 2005 basically up until he shaves his hair, but really until the heel turn, right? And we've seen like that kind of star like not necessarily age well and transition out of that kind of role. I mean, look at his immediate senior. He is someone who, in a lot of ways, Magnum Tokyo, if the money around Dream Stage Entertainment wasn't so good in 2007, 2008, we probably would have not have seen him after that point, because he recognized that like being that kind of star and having that much of effect on that on like your physical appearance, you're going to age out of that, right? Whereas Hulk has been someone who's kind of been forced to evolve with that. And I think that in of itself, you still, when you see this guy, sometimes you go back and you're thinking about like Russell or World One BB Hulk in silver and gold, like, and then you go, well, Christ, Case, that was 18 years ago. and I feel like that no person in this roster kind of has that level of effect of time, where time has affected them. Like, and again, this isn't like a drag or any negative. It's just kind of like, we had the first Dragon Kid match in Tokyo, other than SSW Quest, but we had like his first like Dragon Gate match of Dragon Kid in Tokyo since his neck injury. Dragon Kid feels like we talk about like timeless in him, but and like as a positive about his physical ability and all of that, and that's all right and good. I mean, that should be credit to it, but a level of the timelessness of Dragon Kid is after 1999 and really after like and into 2000, anytime in the last 25 years you'll see Dragon Kid and he'll be the exact same Dragon Kid you see any other time throughout that 25 years. Hulk just is not that figure, because we've seen like that just big transition that has to happen when you are that idol like teeny bopper style, and like because of that, I think we feel the age a lot more with him.
I would argue Hulk at one point had one of the best looks in wrestling, and I do think the biggest hurdle that he's faced in the last 5 years or so is that, for as talented as he is, still, he has a terrible look, and I think it's distracting to a lot of people that knew what young BB Hulk looked like. And I feel like if you just would have put him in a normal pair of tights and boots, I think the change would have been less jarring for people, and they would have been able to make it work that way. But it's an interesting thing with him. It's 20 years, and I think a career that has, I don't know if underrated is the right word. He's not somebody that I would put on the Dragongate Mount Rushmore. He's not one of the 100 greatest wrestlers of all time, but a great career. And 20 years is 20 years. And I will continue to hammer this point home as KZ celebrates 20 next year. And, we're coming up on Cyberconk's 20th anniversary. And then before you know it, we'll be an entirely new generation of guys that are hitting 20 years or 15 years or 25 years. It's a really long time. You insert any 80s wrestler here, think about their peak year in the 80s, and then think about what they were doing 20 years after the fact. And it's alarming, because I got news for you. None of them held up in the way that these Dragongate guys do. And I just think that's a point that doesn't get brought up enough.
Happy 20th anniversary, Akira Tozawa.
Happy 20th anniversary, Akira Tozawa. I believe on the day we're recording this.
April 3rd, actually.
Well, happy 20th
I
anniversary.
had to look to make sure, because I knew it was this first week of April because of that. And Don Fuji posted the "In This Day in History" of Tozawa. It was the baseball magazine thing, but Tozawa spitting water at him leading up to their first match.
Fantastic.
I mean, just perfect with that. But just zooming through the rest of this case, because I know we want to talk about Vegas. The rest of the show that we really have not touched on, you had the most touched football opener that you could, Kondo, Washi, PT, and Ryu versus DK, Doi, Fuji, and Genki. Doible, so we got that thing, and we got the not hug interaction, which is what you want from that match. A fun trios, SMJ, UT, and Ho-Ho versus Mochi, Fuda, and Sahara. Really loved Strong Machine J with Aki with that.
Loved Strong Machine J and Sahara. Loved UT and Fuda. I will have to give credit to Fuda here.
Yeah, this was Fuda had a good hot tag, I felt like, in this match.
He did.
Yeah. But that was your Cork and Hall. We didn't talk about Yuki Yoshioka versus Johnny Valletta, but it was a long angle. And it was basically to get Yoshioka out of the D-Courage locker room for the main event.
Yes.
Yeah. Vegas case, it's upon us.
It's coming. It's coming quick.
Well, Dragongate has had, we've had Ho-Ho on when they just started announcing it. Dragongate makes their return to Wrestlemania Weekend and revitalize the Dragongate USA brand with 2 shows. The first one, the Rebirth, on the 16th from the Munin View at the Palms Resort, and then the Dragongate Plus Pro Wrestling Revolution, Gate of Revolution, on Friday the 18th at the Meet in Vegas. Okay, so it's been Dragongate did their homework first and got their whole cards out 2 weeks before anyone else's, but we decided to wait until now to talk about this and talk about the weekend. But interesting kind of shows that Dragongate set up for them for these 2 Vegas weekend shows.
What is the thing, whether it's a specific match or an entire show or a wrestler or whatever it may be, what's the thing that you're most looking forward to here?
I think for me, I'm really looking forward to Hyo in the States.
Okay, I understand completely.
I feel like that you're going to get to see like people like him and Ishin in front of audiences where like we've seen how great they have really connected over the last 18 months within Japan. I'm really looking forward to see that kind of interplay. But if I'm like looking at the shows and the matches, from the Rebirth show, the main event match, Paradox versus Z-Brats, of course, gets the underline, but I'm really into KZ versus Marcus Matter.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think this Wednesday show, top to bottom, is the best card that I've seen of any of the shows during at USA. The Rebirth again happening Wednesday night. KZ versus Mathers with the injury to Cole Radrick. I like the way they rebooked that 3-way tag. I obviously could do without Jimmy Lloyd, who is the replacement, but I like the rest of the guys in that match. I'm pumped for the Stardom Showcase. I'm into that. I will go into that with an open mind. And my thing, to answer my own question here, but it ties into that Wednesday show. The thing that I'm most looking forward to is I think between the Wednesday show and the Friday show, they have set themselves up to have one, if not hopefully 2, absolutely excellent 6-man tags. And Dragongate can do all, not that they're running away from this, but they could do all the marketing they want to say that we're a new Dragongate and that the 6-man was 19 years ago. And we don't do that anymore. And it would be irrelevant. People are going to come to see Dragongate wrestlers in America and they want to see a good 6-man tag. And I think the ones they laid out, both could be really excellent.
Yeah. And I think that with how they've, with the roster that they have bringing to them, they have a unique situation that I think is actually really strong for them, that they're able to do these Dragongate 6-man tags, like where you're going to get Z-Brats versus Paradox, and you're going to get Z-Brats versus combined class of 2016 for the Love of Hyo. I guess we could call that trio. But that also gives the opportunity where, elsewhere throughout the weekend, you're going to get the Wagners and Ares against a Dragongate trio. You're going to get Mala Family versus a Dragongate trio. It has the one thing that I feel like that we really get to see this WrestleMania weekend is the fact that the match that set this entire concept of doing piggyback weekends, like the reason why it's still very much a viable thing in the wrestling industry 19 years later, the thing that you want best from Dragon Gate is an F and trios match, and that they put forth, I think the best possible thing, combination of that. Don't listen to whatever Gabe is going to put on the WWID shows about the 6-man tradition returning. He says it that way because he can't say the fact that it was a Dragon Gate 6-man.
So if you go down the entire weekend, Wednesday, you've got the Dragon Gate USA show. That's going to be all the Dragon Gate guys, KZ, Ben-K, Hyo, Ultima Dragon, La Estrella, Ho-Ho Loon, Yamato, Dragon Kid, and Susumu, and then Shun Skywalker, Coach Minoura, and Ishin. That is what they are doing on Wednesday. On Thursday, on the Defy show, which is at 11 a.m. Pacific time, you have Sinner and Saint versus the Lycos Gym versus Hyo and Susumu Yokosuka. Not however Defy was spelling it and promoting it for the first week they were promoting this match, but Hyo and Susumu, they are challenging for the Defy World Tag Team Championships. At noon that day, the Pandemonium Pro Show, which I do not know if I'm attending yet because there are things on this show that concern me, but there is KZ versus Cappuccino Jones, which could be fun, and then Teton and Ben-K versus Barbaro Cavernario and Yamato, which, you know what, credit to Pandemonium Pro, I would say one of the most intriguing matches on paper of the entire weekend.
Yeah, and I think that they decided to kind of do what I wish I would see from more of these appearances from Dragon Gate, other than doing the trios match. I feel like you have to. Sometimes we bring in the Dragon Gate guys, you got to do a Dragon Gate trio. I just talked ad nauseum about how important it was there. But the idea of doing like a Parejas and Caribe with like CMLL and Dragon Gate with like people who have had like rivalries with that, and it's like, okay, yeah, Ben-K and Yamato on opposite sides, and also Barbaro, Cavernario, and Teton on the opposite sides, and teaming up there. I think that is a fun and unique way to kind of incorporate the promotions, and the idea, instead of doing Dragon Gate versus CMLL, like incorporating them in and mixing them up a little bit. I think it's a really fun idea that I wish we would see a little bit more of. Like, that's the one big positive takeaway I can make about this card when I look at it.
I totally agree. And then also, keep it on Thursday, 3 p.m., you have KZ, Yamato, and Dragon Kid versus Bendito, Toxin, and Latigo. That is on the West Coast Pro Vegas Vacation show. And then at that same venue later that night, 7 o'clock start, I will be at this show for sure. Galeno Del Mal, he held de Dr. Wagner Jr., and Arez versus Z-Brats, Shun Skywalker, Eastern, and Coach Minoura. Mike, I was telling you, that trios match, it kind of maybe the one I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, that's the one that I know that we have a dinner reservation that I'm going to be texting you and Rich and be like, okay, has this match gone on yet? Okay, can I see if I can make it over for this one match? Because it really does feel like that this Z-Brats pairing is the one that I feel like it. Even though these are the cage match participants, and there is that aspect of this that, from a Dragon Gate perspective, is a little bit of intrigue here. I look at their opponents there in Prestige, and you can almost pretty much go like, all right, Hyo Dr. Wagner Jr., let's see what you could do with Kota Minoura. And I'm really intrigued with that idea. Not only that, but also Ishin and Galeno in the same ring. I feel like that's a cultural explosion.
That is Thursday. That is very exciting. And then Friday, they are booked. The Z-Brats guys are booked on the 1:30 p.m. start Texas Wrestling Cartel Mob Tie shows. It is Houston Hendricks and Fly Def, which is Warren J and Zach Zilla, against Voices of Wrestling has it listed as Ben-K, Shun Skywalker, and Ishin. I did just double check. It is Z-Brats. It is Coach Minoura, Shun Skywalker, and Ishin. And then they have nothing booked Dragon Gate wise until that night with the Dragon Gate Pro Wrestling Revolution show, which is Friday night. Deadlock, we're still waiting on a card for. Again, I would think maybe some of the Dragon Gate guys end up on the WrestleCon show, but I don't know that for sure. And as of right now, Mike, that's what we've got going on in Vegas.
Yeah, this Pro Wrestling Revolution Gate of Revolution show, this one is a little bit more chaotic, I feel. The PWR, I have no real, like, other than the ones that we've seen in Dragon Gate, have no real, like, solid pull for a lot of them. But really intrigued by La Estrella and Viento versus Willie Mack and Mike Settle versus El Cucuy and Oni El Benito. That's a match that they'll have me in my seat ready for.
Here's the thing. I could end up eating my words tremendously because maybe by the time we get to Friday night, Yamato's burnout and Yamato versus Swan isn't anything good. And maybe that 3-way tag team match, even though it looks fun on paper, maybe that disappoints. I think there is a charm to this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am into this. My only two complaints are, like I said earlier, I wish Negro Casas was on the show. I wish Casas and Ultimo were doing something together. And I really wish that the Panther brothers were wrestling some Dragongate guys, but there's not enough guys. They were either going to sacrifice a trios match, which I wouldn't advise doing, or put the Panther brothers in a trios match, which I think would have been a little odd. The Panther brothers, for those that have never seen them before, they had a feud in DTU with Kento and Takuma at what was supposed to be the end of Kento and Takuma in Mexico. And we all felt like at the time that they went out with a bang and that the Panther brothers really impressed and were, it was kind of the Panther brothers and Radioactivo, if you remember him, the guys that Kento and Takuma wrestled in Mexico that we felt like, they could go work Japan. Like they're good enough too. So I wish there was, two other guys coming over. I'm admittedly bummed that Kame and Rita or Kame and Junior aren't making the trip over, but I just wish that we could see the Panther brothers against better opponents. But it kind of depends on what the vibe is, but I really could see that Friday night show being a ton of fun. I will obviously be there. I'm quite excited for it.
Yeah, and I guess like there could have been a scenario where you could have done Paradox versus Panther Brothers, but I think with Dragon Kid right now, it even though everything seems to be all okay, but they're kind of easing him. It seems like a little bit.
You know what? They could have done Dragon Kid and Susumu. You're right. That's kind of a bummer. They're not doing that. But
then you would have to figure out who's going to work Ultimo.
Whoever wants an easy night in the squared circle, whoever wants to take it easy that night. And I'm sure there's some PWR locals that would love that.
Hey, Ray Horse, do you want to take it easy tonight? You have Ultimo.
Is Vinny Massaro, is he on the show?
He is not booked.
Well, first of all, that's shocking. Second of all, they could have just done Vinny Massaro versus Ultimo and called it a day.
Oh gosh, I mean I feel like that ETU picking Danny DeManto to have that match was like the perfect Ultimo experience. Him versus Vinny Massaro might be the perfect Ultimo experience. If we had the pencil when we knew that it's going to be Ultimo versus. I'm trying to think who out of Wrestlemania Weekend who's going to be there would be like. It has to be like a match that Ultimo will do. Like he's not going to go against Mad Dog Connolly. Like Ultimo will not do that.
No.
Who would you book Ultimo with to give us the right experience on these shows if you had the option?
God, that is a tough question to answer. By the way, the bounty is still out there. If anybody wants to book Mad Dog Conley versus Ishin, I will buy a ticket to your show.
Yeah, Ultimo not in the senior scramble as we all predicted.
Yes, no, of course not. And thank God, by the way. And I look, people can be excited all they want. I think that spring break card looks
dreadful.
Awful. And I'm over the Bloodsport thing too. And I don't want I have zero interest in Natty Neidhart on a Bloodsport show. I'm sorry. It's not for me. I've seen Saber and Gresham wrestle a million times. I'm good on that. Pete Dunne, I'm good on. Charlie Dempsey, I don't care about. Him and Shinya Aoki might be good, but I don't care.
I did found the person that I would book against Ultimo. Now that I know that he has multiple bookings in Vegas, so he would be up for it.
Who's that?
Oh, it would be Tommy Dreamer.
Oh God, fucking fat asshole! I'm so fucking glad he's not on these shows.
It would be so funny though.
I had a busted open video recommended to me on YouTube this morning, and Tommy Dreamer's in the thumbnail. God, I just what a waste to think that he's been relevant for 30 years at this point.
And 20 years past the ECW.
Oh my God,
25 years past ECW.
I hate looking at him, let alone watching him work. What a fucking fat waste of space that guy is. God, he's awful. I'm now retroactively mad about the Dragongate USA show that he worked.
God, I forgot that he actually. Yeah, it was that. Yeah, we don't need to revisit that.
No. If anybody missed that, I forget what I think it's either Open the Ultimate Gate 2010 or it's Mercury Rising 2010. Go back 5 years in the archives And
the worst match John Moxley had in DGUSA and should have warned us about the future.
It made the coat match look like Masawa versus Kobashi, let me tell you. That might be the angriest I've ever gotten while recording, was talking about Tommy Dreamer on Dragongate USA. If you've never heard that, I would recommend going back and checking that out.
Yeah, we don't need Tommy Dreamer versus him when I just saw that we could probably get Butterbean versus Ultimo.
Where's Dreamer booked? Oh, Devotion Championship Wrestling, High Stakes in the Desert. It is Manny Lemons against Tommy Dreamer. It is Psycho Clown versus Sam Adonis. Obviously, Sam Adonis doing great work in AAA. Everybody's talking about it. Angelo Risk versus Hyena Hera, and El Perito versus Jack Jameson, which I got to be honest, I don't know Jack Jameson, but he has won me over with that OVW ass ring name. I'm very intrigued by this man.
You know who Jack Jameson is? He's the other guy with the old Iron Savage. He's the Iron Savage's manager.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't have got that, but
I forget what his name was before he worked in AEW. But
okay,
yeah,
I'm looking at photos of this guy right now. It is such a bummer that he was not in John Cena's OVW class, because he could have been the biggest star in all of wrestling.
the real prototype Jack Jameson.
Oh, that's fun. All right, so that's Mania. I'm quite excited for it. You know, I really I'm glad I'm making the trip. It makes me nervous to travel and take time off of work, but I'm glad I'm doing it. And if you're there, please come and say hi. I would love to talk to you about Parker Posey or Dragongate.
Yep, we will probably be having our Parker Posey discussion at some time if you come up and find us at these shows. Yeah, no, it's been so long since I've been to a Mania weekend. Like pre-COVID feels like a lifetime ago.
I've never been. I'm gonna try to make the most of it. I know my tolerance level. I hate long wrestling shows, and I know if I do 3 in a day, I'll be grumpy by the end of the. I guess let me ask you this before we go. What are the shows you're eyeing that aren't the Wednesday and the Friday Dragongate shows? Is there anything else you're doing?
I don't have tickets for anything else right now.
Neither
that Prestige show with really do want to see the Wagner Brothers and the Aras versus Z-Brats. That's got my attention. Other than that, I mean, like the big thing for me is like the West Coast, like Vegas Vacation show. There's just a lot of stuff on that show that I would be sitting through just to see Paradox versus Malafama, you know? Like that's the issue I have with some of these shows and where I am in my wrestling kind of fandom at this point, Case. Is it's just like, no, I don't want to sit through Trevor Lee versus Timothy Thatcher. That sounds like the worst thing to spend my time in Vegas to go do. And there's a chance I would have to sit through that to go see Paradox versus Malafama. And that bums me out.
What West Coast is going head to head with the WrestleCon show.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting to see what else WrestleCon does. That's going to be a decision that I'm going to have to make. I think at this point, I'm locked in on doing DDT instead of Deadlock. I guess I'll wait and see what Deadlock does, but DDT is not going to sell out. So I'm leaning toward DDT there. And then I'm Friday. You know, what's the other show? The Texas Wrestling Cartel show intrigues me. I don't know. I'll be around. Rich and I will be going to a bunch of shows together. So I'm sure we'll have some Path to Greatness posted, but obviously the 2 Dragongate shows, you know, we're gonna do Wednesday and Friday, and then I'm locked in on that Prestige show. I'm quite excited about that, and then everything else we'll have to see.
Yeah, I just saw that Circle 6 show, and I just, what are we doing here?
So I just, maybe it's my fault that I just look at life this way, but I would never think that I would go to Vegas with my indie wrestling crew and that it would go well this weekend. Like this, it should be, you know, with Gabe out of the picture, it should be your Dragongates and your Tokyo Joshis and your DDTs, you know, get the international flair in there, get your WrestleCon Super Show in there, and then 1 or 2, you know, big indies. You know, the Deadlock Prestige Defy thing, like great, those guys belong. All these other promotions do not belong. I don't know what they're doing.
I think that the only people that are going to make it out is going to be like your FSWs that own the venues that people are deciding to be suckers and go see. I mean, Winter Circle Pro Wrestling. That's how many times over this weekend is Scorpio Sky going to be in a match that's just like out on the periphery at this FSW arena. I bet he's in like 3 of them at this point.
That sounds like a bad time. I'm looking at this. This is what, Friday night, Grap House for Vegas by Vegas. They've booked Mao and Tom Lawler and BK Westbrook, who I like, but who's going to that show?
Grap House is a Vegas-based thing.
Okay,
so,
all right. Maybe that's a bad example. Then that's good to know. I will forgive them. I will forgive them for their crimes.
But like whatever Marks R Us is running like this very CZW 2011 coded show, like what are we doing here?
Compton Mania Ghetto Gauntlet match, Paul London versus X. Who's going to that?
The one show that I knew that would get booked was the Ed in San Antonio show. Like, and it's exactly what you expected.
And you know what? I will not be at that. I don't know my weekend plans yet, but let me tell you, I will not be at that.
Yeah. I mean, what else is there to be said other than that it is wild that now he gets to do a Mania weekend show.
Hey, why not?
Yeah,
why not?
You actually like got me a little like flustered for a second, going like, oh god. Like,
if he can do that, maybe next year I have the Lucha Resu super show. I mean, I know, balance out the world's evils.
Case I know where I would not be running one of those shows, and that's going to be at Y'all-In. Tokyo Joshi is running 45 minutes east of Arlington.
That's brutal. That is absolutely brutal.
Yeah. So I don't. If anyone's asking, like, oh, what's going to be the next fly-in weekend? It should not be all in Texas.
Yeah, that's terrible. I feel bad that that's even happening.
Yeah, gosh, I don't know. Like, just imagine in a city without any mass transit, like the Uber cost that would be to get out there.
Thank you. Because I mean, it's a pain to get from.
Chicago,
the Hoffman Estates. Yeah, people stay in the city, and then it's like, oh, sorry, you're in Hoffman Estates for the GCW show. Good luck. And Chicago has great mass transit, but not to Hoffman Estates.
Right. Yeah, and then you contrast that with places that don't have mass transit. I mean, it's kind of wild to think that this area was trying to convince FIFA to have the World Cup finals here.
Yeah,
like it's insane, and like at least from what's been announced, like AEW's based where you think they'd be based, and the GCW stuff, I mean, they'll find some awful looking building in Dallas. It'll be okay.
All right, Mike. Well, we'll
yeah, I think that's gonna do it for us this week. Case next time
we'll have a Those Days episode next week before we leave for Vegas.
Yep, and I expect other things happening in the VoiceGate feed over Vegas weekend as we get close to there, and then we'll be back talking all about that. But for the next time you'll hear us, Case, it's time to get back in Michinoku.
Quite excited. We enter 1994, and I couldn't be more ready for it.
Yep. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We'll be back with you with that. Have a good rest of your weekend, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hello, Voices of Wrestling listener. Dave Ryan here. Have you ever wondered to yourself how many hidden gems are hidden away inside the last years of World Championship Wrestling? Have you ever asked yourself how many tenuous gags can be made about the name Mike Enos? And have you ever thought about what it sounds like for 2 Irishmen to interpret a very chaotic company through its B show? The answers to all this and more are just a click away. Check out Days of Thunder every second Thursday on the Voices of Wrestling podcast network.